The room was sterile, cold, and buzzing with quiet tension. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead, casting long shadows across the lockers and polished floors. Every recruit felt the weight of anticipation, but no one seemed as tense as her. She stood near the edge of the formation, calm, composed, a quiet storm contained behind her eyes. The commander, a tall man with years etched into his stern face, strode in. His presence alone seemed to command absolute attention. Around him, a few senior officers whispered to one another, their voices low, almost conspiratorial. They had heard rumors. They had heard her reputation, or rather, the lack thereof. Inspection, someone muttered under their breath, and a ripple of unease ran through the recruits. Today was different. Today, they weren't just checking uniforms or paperwork. Today, someone wanted to prove a point. And she had become their target. 2 officers approached her, badges gleaming, clipboard in hand. One of them leaned slightly toward the other, whispering, "I heard she's hiding something. Let's see what's in that bag of hers." They exchanged a smirk, thinking it would be a moment of embarrassment, a triumph over someone they deemed insignificant. She noticed nothing. Not their whispers, not the smirks, not the invasive curiosity that seemed to hang around her like a cloud. She adjusted the strap of her bag over her shoulder, a subtle movement, yet it carried an aura of readiness. She had prepared for this day in ways no one could have imagined. "Bring her bag forward," one of the officers said, his tone clipped, almost gleeful. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye turned toward her. Some of the younger recruits shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension, but unsure why. As they lifted the bag, flipping zippers and peeking into compartments, their expressions were smug. They whispered again, thinking the contents would reveal weakness, disorder, something laughable. But what they found instead was precision. Everything in its place, organized, methodical, intentional. "Odd, very odd," one muttered. "Everything's perfect." She stepped forward calmly, letting them continue. She knew the eyes were on her, hungry for a misstep, waiting for a crack. Waiting for the moment to declare her unworthiness. But patience was her ally. Discipline her armor. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone carried the weight of someone who had seen more than they could imagine. A sudden knock on the wall snapped the attention of everyone toward the doorway. The commander stopped in his tracks. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room before settling on her. For the first time, the officers inspecting her bag straightened, sensing that the scrutiny was about to shift. "You," the commander said, pointing directly at her. "Step forward." Her movements were fluid, deliberate. She approached without hesitation, bag in hand, not too fast, not too slow. Every step she took echoed slightly in the silent room, announcing confidence rather than fear. The other officers watched, uncertain now, the smugness fading into apprehension. The commander's gaze shifted to the bag, then to her eyes. There was no mockery in his expression, no doubt. Only recognition. Something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of understanding that the others in the room could not grasp. He extended his hand, not for inspection, but for acknowledgement. "Welcome back, Admiral," he said, his voice carrying authority and respect in equal measure. The room seemed to exhale collectively, a moment suspended in disbelief. The officers who had pried into her life stood frozen. Their assumptions, their judgments, had crumbled silently. They had expected weakness, they had found mastery. She nodded once, a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture. No words were necessary. The truth had been revealed. The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, not tense, but loaded with respect, realization, and the dawning understanding that underestimating her had been a grave mistake. And in that moment, she understood it too. Sometimes, the world tests you not to humiliate you, but to reveal your true strength. The room had changed. The perception had shifted. And she, calm and composed, had done nothing but be exactly who she was meant to be. The tension in the room was palpable. Every recruit shifted uneasily on their feet, the low hum of murmurs and shuffling papers filling the air. She stood quietly near the back, her bag slung over her shoulder, appearing calm and almost invisible to the untrained eye. But those who had tried to mock her earlier had no idea that they were about to witness something far beyond their expectations. 2 officers, eager to expose what they thought would be a flaw, had approached her moments ago. They eyed her bag, their hands itching to pry, their whispers dripping with condescension. "Let's see what she's hiding," one had murmured, almost with glee. The other nodded, certain that some small detail would give them the victory they desired. She didn't react. Not a twitch, not a flinch, not even a hint of worry. Inside, she was ready. Every step, every detail of her bag's contents, had been meticulously prepared for this exact moment. This wasn't just about passing an inspection, this was about proving something that went far beyond uniforms and paperwork. The first officer unzipped the main compartment. His eyes widened slightly as he saw rows of meticulously organized items, maps, documents, tools, and a small, unassuming notebook. Nothing appeared out of place. He whispered to his partner, This can't be right. Everything is perfect." The second officer dug deeper, lifting small compartments and pouches. Even here, every item had its purpose, its place. There was no evidence of negligence, no hint of carelessness. Their smug expressions faltered, replaced by confusion. The bag, which they had expected to reveal incompetence, only revealed precision. The whispers in the room shifted from amusement to doubt. Other recruits watched with curiosity now, sensing that this was no ordinary inspection. There was a presence about her that demanded attention, not with arrogance, but with an unspoken authority. Every eye in the room was subtly drawn toward her, even those who had tried to belittle her. Then came the subtle click of the door, and the atmosphere shifted. The commander entered, his presence commanding immediate silence. He moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to leadership, his eyes scanning the room and resting finally on her. The officers handling her bag stiffened, sensing the gravity of the moment. The whispers ceased completely. "Step forward," the commander said, his voice clear and firm. It was a simple command, yet it carried the weight of judgment and recognition simultaneously. She walked forward with measured steps, each one deliberate, calm, and composed. She wasn't rushing. She was aware that this was a performance, but not for them, for the truth itself. The commander's gaze fell on the bag. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he looked at her, then back at the officers, and then back again. There was a pause, a tension so thick it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Then came a single phrase that broke the silence. "Welcome back, Admiral." The words hit the officers like a shockwave. Their assumptions, their whispers, their plan to humiliate her, shattered. The commanding officer's salute was not just a gesture, it was a declaration. The truth was finally out. She was not merely another recruit. She had experience, authority, and a skill set that no one in that room could question. Even the other recruits, who had observed silently, felt a shift in the atmosphere. They realized they were witnessing more than a reprimand or a review, they were witnessing recognition, earned and undeniable. Her poise, her calm, and the meticulous organization of her belongings had spoken louder than any words ever could. The officers who had attempted to expose her now stepped back, their expressions a mix of shame and awe. Some looked away, unwilling to meet her eyes, others simply nodded in reluctant acknowledgement. It was a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Never underestimate someone based on appearances or assumptions. She nodded faintly in return to the commander's salute, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had always known her own worth. This moment wasn't about revenge or proving others wrong. It was about the affirmation of the truth, a truth that had been visible all along, but overlooked by those blinded by bias and assumptions. In that instant, the room had changed. The mockery had vanished. Doubts had been silenced. Respect, real and earned, filled the air. She had not raised her voice. She had not demanded attention. Yet, every person present understood, with crystal clarity, the weight of her presence, the authority she commanded, and the skill she possessed. As she collected her bag and prepared to leave, the officer who had been most confident of her failure lingered for a moment. Then he straightened, his head slightly bowed, not in submission, but in respect. The other officers followed suit, and even the younger recruits felt a renewed understanding of discipline, authority, and the quiet power of capability. She walked out of the inspection room not as someone who had been tested, but as someone who had triumphed, not through confrontation, but through the undeniable demonstration of competence, poise, and preparedness. The room had finally settled into an uneasy quiet. The whispers had died down, replaced by a collective tension that hung thick in the air. Every recruit, every officer, and even the commander himself seemed caught in the gravity of what had just unfolded. She stood still, her bag now neatly at her side, her posture relaxed but unyielding, a person who had weathered countless storms and emerged not just unbroken, but commanding. The officers who had earlier pried into her belongings exchanged uneasy glances. Their smirks and whispered jokes had vanished like smoke in the wind. Pride, arrogance, and assumptions, the very tools they had used to measure her, had no bearing now. The truth was simple, undeniable, and it glimmered in her calm, unwavering eyes. She was not merely a recruit, she was an admiral. One of them, the tallest among them, finally stepped forward, swallowing his pride. "Admiral, he began, but trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. His words had been meant for mockery, but now even he felt the weight of her authority, her skill, her unwavering discipline. She looked at him, not with anger, not with gloating, but with the quiet authority of someone who expected respect because she had earned it, not because she demanded it. Her eyes, steady and discerning, seemed to read every thought, every hidden insecurity in the room. The commander's gaze never left her. He had seen countless soldiers come and go, countless recruits stumble and rise, but there was something different about her. Something precise, focused, unshakable. A quiet power that didn't announce itself with noise or flamboyance, but with sheer competence and confidence. "You've done well," he said finally, a hint of approval in his tone. "Not because you proved them wrong, but because you proved yourself right." Her lips curled into a faint smile. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't satisfaction. It was acknowledgement of a journey few could comprehend. She had faced judgment, mockery, and skepticism, yet she had maintained her composure, her discipline, and her focus. And now, all of it had culminated in a moment where respect was earned, not borrowed, not assumed. Around her, the recruits began to shift their perspective. Some looked on in awe, realizing that what they had assumed was weakness was in fact strength, unseen and unrecognized. Others, perhaps more reflective, noted the silence, the authority, and the calm that she brought into the room. It was a lesson more profound than any drill, any lecture, any punishment or reward the academy could provide. "Admiral," one of the younger recruits finally whispered, his voice tinged with awe, how did you manage all this so effortlessly?" She glanced at him, her gaze soft but firm. "Effortless isn't the point," she said calmly. "Discipline, preparation, and knowing who you are, that's what matters. The world will try to underestimate you, let it. But never underestimate yourself." The officers who had previously mocked her now nodded, some in shame, some in genuine respect. There was a lesson there for all of them. Assumptions can be dangerous, arrogance can blind, and courage is often quiet, not loud. The room that had been tense with judgment was now heavy with reflection. The commander stepped closer, his voice low but clear. "I don't salute everyone, but you've earned it. Welcome back, Admiral." The words resonated through the room like a bell, and in that instant, all pretense, all mockery, all doubt vanished. Recognition was no longer symbolic, it was real, earned, undeniable. And she, standing there calm and composed, finally felt the weight of her journey settle into her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of authority she had always deserved. As she picked up her bag and moved toward the exit, every step echoed confidence. The room watched her leave, not as someone who had been ridiculed or doubted, but as a symbol of perseverance, mastery, and quiet authority. Outside, the sunlight fell on her face, warm and bright. The academy, the training, the judgment, the silence, they were all behind her. Ahead lay a path that she would walk with certainty and command, a path few could tread, and fewer still could follow. In that moment, it wasn't about the bag, the mockery, or even the salute. It was about recognition, truth revealed, respect earned, and the quiet but undeniable power of someone who had always known her own worth. And as the door closed behind her, the room seemed to hold its breath, a lasting silence in honor of the admiral who had returned, not just to the academy, but to her rightful place.